Welcome to
the League of Legends Anonymous podcast.
Holy shit, where are we?
You just gotta settle into the addiction and then let it take over, you know.
Double kill.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's LOLA podcast. We're doing a little something different this week. I'm going to bring you another off-meta support mini-sode with Wise Papa Smurf. We're going to talk about some supports that are kind of in the meta, but mostly supports that aren't. And kind of relative strengths of just my impressions. I haven't spent a ton of time on this like I did the last one, but this is more from my experimentation and general thoughts about what would be strong given the current meta. So let's talk about that a little bit, because whenever I say the current meta, not a lot has changed with the actual supports themselves, but it's the runes that you take advantage of that can make an enormous difference in what you're doing, right? And what runes you synergize with. And right now, since Spellbook has been nerfed back down, I'm not saying it's dead, I'm just saying it's been nerfed back down. The main support runes that you're looking to hard synergize with are Electrocute, Airy, Comet, or Aftershock in the Resolve tree. In one case, before I start this, it's not off meta, but Tom Kinch is disgusting with the Glacial Augment. So watch out for that. That is really, really strong right now, but that's also super meta, so I don't really want to devote a whole lot of time to it. But whenever I say those keystones, it's really about how your support synergizes with what's out there, right? So if you want to get an idea of where my baseline was at, I don't really think too much of what I said in the last episode has changed. I haven't gone back and listened to it in a while, but my thoughts are basically this, and I'll just kind of roll down the list of a lot of things that I play that I think are good, and then some things that at the end of the episode, I'm going to focus a lot more on like conjecture and a little bit of theory craft to see maybe if there's something that could work, right? Keep in mind, this is simply my opinion at the present moment. I would actually be open to counter argument if anybody wants to, send in something to the show. I'll be happy to read, on the regular little podcast, and we can talk about it. So that ought to be fun. Well, let's start here. Anivia has long been a pocket pick of mine as support. I think Anivia is still good at support. She did take a hit before Comet, because they took down a lot of the reliability of her damage post 6, because she used to be able to ER and then immediately do double damage. You can't really do that anymore, but the compensation buff they gave was to lower the cooldown of the wall, thus upping its availability. Now, that's not particularly sexy, but that being said, that buff is huge in a 2v2, particularly if you have non-mobile champions. Anivia is a lot like Trundle in that she's much more effective depending who you play against. But unlike Trundle, you don't have to risk everything if you miss, right? So like Trundle, if you're going to do an engagement, you have to walk ass up and beat that ass with a club. Anivia, you can loft an ice ball at him, right? Her egg is still an auto win in a 2v2 if your ADC doesn't abandon you. And she has a surprising amount of damage early. That being said, while the old nerf did make her less oppressive than she used to, the early game access to gold without having to buy a sightstone covers up that Anivia really needs to get that tier early or some sort of mana. Yeah, she has to resolve her mana issues early, because you just drain yourself with your ult super fast. So that does help her a lot, and I think she basically moves up in the tier list, because if somebody doesn't have, they don't have wall, or you have wall, they don't have flash, it's like cacao. except it's more like cocked. See, I took the bird thing and then made it cocked. Even better. All right. Next up is Gragas. I think Gragas is still very strong. He's really good with the Resolve tree. You can go into Aftershock Targons and build a tank, or you can go like Electrocute Frost Queen for like an all-in punch combo. Both are good. I prefer Resolve and kind of building tanky AP. I think it's a little bit better on Gragas because it's hard to scale as a support unless you really get ahead AP-wise. And even if you do get ahead AP-wise, Gragas is still going kind of that tanky AP build that doesn't give a lot of raw boom potential. So, yeah, and, you know, while he can be very consistent, like if you have Flash Up, you're pretty much guaranteed to hit your combo. You know, but all that said, he can be incredibly good if you're good at him, or incredibly bad if you're not. So Gragas is more about how good you are at the champion than how good he is as a support, but I still feel like he can perform in the role. He has a lot of innate sustain for very cheap. He has a lot of damage reduction that gives him survivability in 2v2s, because damage reduction is big, particularly when you have two people trying to kill you. And like I said, he can still be effective with very little AP. He can poke with barrels, or he can go all in with body slam. And, you know, displacement ult is always good if you land it. So, still very good. Vel'Koz is next on my list. I think Vel'Koz is actually sleeper OP at the moment. Nobody really plays him. I can't tell you when the last time I saw a Vel'Koz support was. I should, because he's very good. He doesn't have to build hard early into, like, he didn't really benefit from building hard into his early support item. He didn't necessarily have a lot of synergy with his support item because you wanted to rush Pen anyway. Like, you wanted to go your second tier of your support item for money generation and then rush Pen. If you do that same thing with Vel'Koz now, you just get there faster and get wards and get Pen faster. Also, his kit has so many slows on it that if you poke, you're pretty much guaranteed to land Comet. It's like undodgeable extra free poke beyond the insane poke he already has. So, yeah, he is really damn good. And his combo, like if you catch an ADC at 6, they're gonna die if your ADC does anything, and sometimes even if they don't. So, Vel'Koz support, incredibly legitimate, and I think sleeper OP. Sion support. Depending on, if you look at the win rates, he's over 50% right now, like 55% top, 54% support. Those are distorted numbers because the people that play him right now are mains, and then when he gets notoriety, other people play him, and then the win rate goes back down. But, that being said, Sion with Comet and Minion Kick is actually really, really good. Because the base value on Comet is stupid high. Sion's inherent tankiness is real high. And yeah, you can just kick minions into an ADC and chain Comet them for tons and tons of damage while still being tanky with just base values. And that is really gross. Also, you're a huge bush threat because the bush conceals your Q. So, all that said, he is really good. The downside is, when you kick minions, you are pushing your wave almost guaranteed. So you're playing him as a poke support, not really as a tank support in laning phase. Out of laning phase, he's going to be a tank support with, like, you're going to be the engage. And then you're going to peel. Right? You're going to engage or peel. If you use your ult for engage, great. Make sure you hit a lot of people. If you, or you hit somebody that's really important. If you don't, you can use your ult to peel for your ADC or your Q to peel for your ADC. So he's always pretty effective. And, you know, the only drawback is that he requires some practice to play. That the minion punt is not actually all that easy to hit. And if your opponent is smart about it, it can be pretty easy to dodge if they're constantly watching you. It's actually harder to constantly watch you in a 2v2 lane because they have to watch your ADC too. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to note his ult is also really hard to steer and really easy to dodge if you see it coming. Also, it's super easy to like face plant into a tree by edging the hitbox. I, of course, have never done that. And anyone who claims to have seen it is a fucking liar until a video comes out. So, there you go. Never happened. But yeah, actually can be quite good, and early damage is oppressive. Lux. Okay. Lux is actually not that bad. The problem is other champions are better at what Lux does, I think, in the bot lane. If you think about it, Lux has virtually the same kind of pattern as Brand does. So with Brand, you're going to walk close, hit a bunch of moves, and that's it. With Lux, it's actually worse because you have to hit your ability from far and then follow up on it with an auto attack to get max damage, or two, which extends you out beyond a trade further than you're going to want to be. Right? It also kind of reminds me of Veigar, except Veigar's more of like you're going fishing. Right? So let's talk about Veigar support. Veigar support the advantages of it, it's crazy good in a team fight. The cage can single-handedly turn a team fight if you drop it well. He has boom boom potential with his ult, and he can actually scale better than any other AP support can scale because he scales automatically with kills and assists and gets tons of free damage automatically. Downside, you are hot fucking garbage until at least level 3 when you can put your whole kit together. At level 6, you get a murder button that you shouldn't hesitate to use if you hit an ADC with your combo, because most ADCs will just die if you drop your full combo with your W, your Q, your stun, and your ult all on them, because I'm assuming that your ADC will follow up with some damage and hit them with something. Also, you have an excuse when you accidentally farm with your Q. Stack them like a pancake, bitch. So anyway, Morgana. I feel like everybody's forgotten about Morgana. She was the classic off-meta support that became a meta support, and then everybody's like, oh yeah, Morgana, she's just a support. And then now I haven't seen her for forever. She is still very, very good. And, the only major drawback to Morgana was that she was really dependent on the Twin Shadows, the spooky ghost effect of the support item. But now that they're bringing Twin Shadows back, that actually stands, it's a cheap item. It does well with her kit. And yeah, I could see that being really effective for her and her falling right back into her place if people realize how good that is on her. By the way, it's really good on Brand too. All right, next up, Kennen. Kennen, it feels like absolutely nothing has changed since the last episode I did. This can work, Kennen support. It does work. You will take Electrocute because your whole kit is based on landing one thing and then proccing a whole bunch of extra shit. And so it's like 3 hits is virtually implicit in Kennen's kit. And, the benefit is you have good poke and your engage is epic in the bot lane. And you can, prime your auto attacks for stuns. So you get your shuriken set up to where it has the charge on it. and you just auto Q W stun. And you do a dickload of damage, and the ADC can't do anything about it. So that is really effective. Or you fly out of the bush with an E, tag them, auto W, stun. Right? Kennen is really good. And he has crazy good engage at 6. You can speed yourself up without the use of an item. And that's awesome. The other option is you can max Q for poke in a lane that poke would be better. You can max W instead of Q in a lane that you're really going to focus on your level 6 engagement. Right? Because W will do multi-target damage in combination with your ult. And that's really good at 6. So if you're wanting to double kill them at 6, take W and max it. If you want to do single target poke and be more of a lane bully, take Q. It depends on who you're up against and kind of what the relative power spikes are, I think. Shen. We've done Shen support so many times, and I think this is the best that it's really ever been right now. He gets tanky automatically because of his shields. He scales really well just with your map awareness. Like, what you can do with that champion directly scales based on what your map awareness actually is, right? So on top of that, his damage is absolutely fucking bonkers, level 2 through like level 5 as you put points into his Q. Even at level 2, you do an insane amount of damage if you just taunt them and drag your Q through them. Like insane, I will murder you damage if your ADC follows up. With Ignite, you can almost do it on your own. So he is highly recommended by me for a tank support. However, and this has been super irritating for me as I've been playing Shen lately, if you're playing with or against Shen, remember that if he activates his W, anybody in a circle near his sword will not take auto attack damage for like a second and a quarter. So that's 2 to 3 autos that you just don't take and get completely negated. If you have a stacking champion, they don't stack. If you have like Kog'Maw, who's popped his like super spit, nope, that's not going to do as much damage as he thought. And you can just win trades automatically on that. But you have to stand and position near the fucking sword. Don't forget to do that. You will survive the other ADC's counterattack after the taunt breaks if you get close and stand in the sword. All right. I have talked about Brand already, but I want to talk about him directly. The nerf to his passive, where they went from, they buffed his passive to like double. That was nuts. He was broken. Then they nerfed his damage back down to like 3% from 4%. This has not gutted his effectiveness. He still has a ton of boom boom. And this champion can just carry out of bot lane with pure damage. He is a monster in team fights. And if you can master him in low elo where people just clump together by default and they don't spread out even after your ult goes out, you can just win by yourself. It's really stupid. And he's pretty consistent. Like, if you're good with his mechanics, he's really consistent. It's not like, I mean, you can screw it up, but it's, it's not, the kit isn't super hard. It's one of those kind of classic kits that is not so, like, mechanics required that it can't be picked up. So, Brand is really strong right now. Like, in terms of just an AP burst damager, he is really strong. And, being able to free him up to do extra damage early is pretty big in terms of the Sightstone second item support mess. So, there you go. Leona. I still see Leona being banned. Do not buy into the hype. After the adjustments, she feels exactly the same as she did for the last 3 years. She's been hit so that she's brought back into line. Her Aftershock is now appropriate on her kit, and she's not broken. She's just Leona like she's always been. At least that's the way it feels to me. Next up, Zilean. Zilean feels like he always has felt. He just doesn't have like a super synergistic keystone. Like it feels like I should want to run Comet on Zilean, but the problem is that unless you just land your double bomb, or unless you're within slow range, which usually you're not in lane because you're made out of glass and you don't want to get that close to somebody if you're not all-inning, there's no way to guarantee the Comet's actually going to land. However, like, I guess you could take Airy would be the choice. But, yeah, Comet doesn't feel as good as it should, but it feels like that should be what you want to do, but you just don't. So, there's always, I guess, Airy. But he does exactly the same things that he's always done. He still has an amazing late game. He's still amazing at team fights. He's still really good at having someone on your team that just is carrying, never dies. Right? That's Zilean. If you're carrying, if you have a Vayne, if you have somebody who's just like a Warwick or something that's hard to take down anyway, and get back up. That's really good. I mean, he can do some things in late game team fights if he lands his stun. It's just not, it's difficult because you have to land it. Like, you have to land the double bomb. And if you miss the double bomb, it feels like you've done nothing. So it feels very feast or famine, right? But, like I said, he's still the same. He still feels like super out of date, kitschy kit. And like, in order to enjoy playing it, it still feels like you'd have to be like you'd have to describe yourself as being like an old soul and also like a cutter. And so it takes kind of like a unique mix of a person to really want to play Zilean. That being said, I've been playing more Zilean and I'm, wearing long sleeves. So, Nautilus. Nautilus feels terrible. The nerfs have hurt too much. He feels like he doesn't do anything better than any other supports that do the same thing as him. Like, he's like a bad version of Thresh or a bad version of Blitz right now, and he doesn't get tanky enough to, like, balance out that the other champions are just better than him, right? Because that was kind of his identity as support is, I'm a tankier Thresh. I'm a guy that has a ton of CZ and did a whole shitload of damage with my E. Well, it doesn't really feel like it does that anymore. So I'd say steer clear on that one. That's the one I would say just it just does not work anymore. Okay, here's where I'm going to get more into kind of half conjecture and half I've done this, but it requires kind of a niche. Elise. I've played support Elise. I played it a lot towards the end of last season or kind of midway through last season. It's a lot of fun. It can do a lot of damage. You are a multi-form champion. You've got 2 kits basically early. That's super gross because every time you get an ability, you get 2 abilities. The other teammate has 2 abilities, you have 4. The other teammate has 3 abilities, you have 6. That can be really strong and really oppressive because you've also got Repel's instant ability to all-in somebody. And if you have the right ADC, that can be really gross. You would have to commit to this pick to make it work because you'd have to be really good at Elise, and Elise is a hard champion to play. However, that being said, she would benefit from being able to build a lot of pin early. And, in addition, Electrocute would be really good on her. That would be the way to go. Because you're going to be able to get that off in any scenario that you land something and then go all in. Because that's your kit. So, she would synergize fairly well with that rune as a support. Alright, Pantheon. You're going to take coin for that mana and for that money. And then you're going to stun for that ass. You are truly effective in a kill lane. but you scale into like garbage can water. Like it's just kind of gross and sticky and, you know, yeah, it's garbage can water. You don't drink that. You pour it out and pretend that you didn't let your garbage can get into such a state that multiple colored liquid is just pooling in the bottom. That's what you will be at the end of the game, because you're not going to be able to buy AD items. You're not going to be able to get dangerous unless you just absolutely and continuously butt crush mid. Because remember, Pantheon falls off late on his own. He just has a strong early game and then starts tapering at the mid game where he's super strong and then falls off completely at the end of the game. If you're a support and the average support game happens, you're going to have a real strong early game. You're going to start tapering off in the mid game much harder because you don't have the money to truly achieve your mid game. And then you just become a tanky stun bot. Like that's what you're going to do. So be prepared to dominate early and be a stun bot late. And it works really well in a kill lane. It's like automatic because he has so much base damage. All right. Teemo. Summon area on this little bitch and poison. It is just dumb together. Also, blind is really good against ADC champs because you can poke and basically just not be traded against. It is a dominant early game pick because he does so much with just, you know, you're just going to Q blast him and then auto, you know, and then you're out. And by the time they can really even trade back on you, they've lost so much health, it's ludicrous. So, yeah, it can be really gross. Also, his, like, I walk into a bush and I'm just invisible and can walk around forever is extra good in the bot lane simply because, in the top lane, you can do that and it's really, okay, great, I'm invisible, I can walk around the bush, tee-hee-hee, but you also have to farm. As a support, you're free to just move about the jungle or move about your lane and just have stupid amounts of presence from the fact that you could literally be anywhere in that bush, right? So that's really gross. Like Pantheon, though, you have surprising early damage, but you're useless if you don't crush because you scale. And like the problem with Teemo has always been, past being a lane bully, doesn't really have an identity. You're either a split push or a guy that throws mushrooms everywhere. And while you can still do that, it just is less effective from a support point of view because you don't have the money that you'd have in like top lane. But it can be fun. It's not good, but it can be fun and it's somewhat doable. Like I've had fun doing it. It's not good though. It's just not. Because they're like, okay, so you want to do a ton of damage and you want to be an AP threat that's annoying. Play Brand, play Zilean, play Veigar, play, you know, Lux even. They all kind of, it's the same thing, but they do more of that than he does. So I don't know. But the bush traps are fun. So, Fiddle. Fiddle was on my list last time. I can't remember the last time I saw a Fiddle support. And that's because nothing much has really changed about him. Again, he really doesn't have a synergistic keystone. I guess you'd take either Electrocute or Airy. I don't know. I really don't know. That would be... Yeah, he's less than good. He requires too much luck because the thing that made Zilean good and oppressive is whenever you bounce the perfect crow and it goes like straight to them, bounces between them like 5 times, and then they've lost at like level 2 or level 1 because your crow bounced too damn many times for them to stay in lane, and they're just terrified that you're going to land that second crow and hit them like 3 or 4 more times, right? But if you don't get that, then what's going to happen is you're going to push your lane into oblivion and you'll lose lane while doing like no damage to the enemy. In a 2v2, like in lane, Fiddle can succeed by drain tanking some enemies in some matchups that he's up against. You really can't do that in bot lane because you're still made out of paper and you have to drain tank, quote unquote, 2 sources of damage, and you're not maxing drain first in the bot lane. You're really putting points either into Crow or Fear. Your drain is not that good, so don't play it like you'd play it mid. His ult is really fun, but his CC is weak if you don't throw at least 1 point into your Fear after your first Crow upgrade. So you go Crow, Fear, probably drain Crow, and then 1 more point into Fear. If you're really busting it, you put, I guess, another point into Crow. But this is like a teehee pick. It's not good, and it's totally like you're dice rolling, and you could just do this same thing and field this troll and play Zilean or somebody who's actually got more merit and isn't so random. Okay, Nunu. I have heard people start theory crafting on why Nunu's a good support again and why it would totally work and why you should try Nunu and it'd be great and support. No. He still feels terrible. And the problem is the buffs to Nunu they don't translate into the bot lane. And before you argue with me that, oh, wait, 40% AP buff would be really good on Misfortune and Ezreal and all those champions that have AP scalings, right? There's 2 reasons why that doesn't work. 1, it's a hard cap, so even if they build a shit ton of AP, they're still only get I think max 140. And 2, 80, which is you get the functional equivalent of a Needless or something. I can't remember. But anyway, actually I'd take that back. The numbers are better than that, but still it's not that much. And 2, ADCs, they don't build AP to scale with. They have the scalings, but you don't build AP Ezreal out of the bot lane. You build AP Ezreal out of the mid lane if you're a sadist. Or I guess a masochist in this case, because you want to cause pain to yourself. That being said, it's effective on champions that themselves build AP and attack speed. Those champions are Kale, Azir, Diana, Kennen, Teemo. These are champions that get by. Any champion that would be thrilled to build a Nashor's Tooth is a champion that would pair well with Nunu. Because they get all 3 effects of the Blood Boil. They get the move speed, they get the attack speed, and they get the AP that's actually really gross as a super buff if you can throw that on somebody who gets all 3. Right? It's better. Nunu is clearly better than it was, but it's like a toilet instead of a sewer treatment plant. So it's not as bad, but still, it's still not good, right? Trundle. Okay, this is a niche pick. It is really effective against champions without a dash escape. If you don't have a dash escape, you can literally throw a pillar and auto win and all in. You'll get a flash, and then the next pillar, you kill them. Keep in mind, for Trundle to work, you have to pillar and then all in. You're going to go Q him, and you have to be right next to his ass to be able to do that, because you're going to steal his AD, and you're going to auto-tech Q auto and beat the ever-living dog shit out of this dude as he tries to get back around your pillar. If your ADC does anything, there's virtually no way you can lose this mess. Right? It's really, really, really strong. But if they have a dash, then your pillar doesn't mean anything. It's just bad. Right? Because it's oh no, a pillar. Whoosh. Okay. Well, maybe next time. So, make sure that you have a late pick before you take Trundle. Because it's really strong against certain matchups and really crap against others. And keep in mind, his early game damage is gross. So if you go all in, you will win an all in unless they dash your pillar and you can't close on them. But you also usually won't win if you try to just walk up and trade with them, because without the pillar, they'll just walk away from you and kite you at range and still do a ton of damage. So keep that in mind. All right, conjecture mode, full conjecture. Zoe. I have not played Zoe in the bottom lane. However, Zoe is a dumb fucking champion. And with twice as many summoner spells to steal, I could see her working as a support. And I would not be surprised to discover that she's like absolutely broken there too, because she's broken anywhere. And I hate this fucking mess of a champion. And I'm kind of like, I want to see things taken out of her kit, not just reduced in effectiveness, but I want to see things start to go. And until, she does have CC, she does have spammable poke, and it hits like a truck, I could see this totally working. I have put zero effort into it, but I would surmise it's probably pretty good because she doesn't require a lot of AP items to like burst down a sleepy ADC. The downside is you've always got, if you have a skilled support, you've always got somebody to block your paddle star follow up on a drowsied ADC. So Swain, the new Swain. I would really be interested to test this, but you'd have to have like another source of CC that's present on your kit, like a Xayah or like a Jhin or somebody like that can bring some kind of assist to what he does. Because I mean, if you hit like a never move and then Jhin hits his W or something, or Xayah hits her arrows, and then you auto to pull them back at you, and you drop your little eyeball bomb on them, and you do all that, like, that seems like it could be pretty gross. And champions that have, like, jump escapes, like Trist, if I have a theory, and again, this is conjecture, you could auto her out of her jump. Because people have done that. Like, I saw a video where they autoed somebody out of a bomb plant because they went airborne, and Swain's passive counts airborne as CC'd. I don't know if that would work, but it's definitely worth a shot to test it, and then it could be like a pretty gross pocket pick against exactly that. I don't know if that will work. Again, pure conjecture, but could be really cool. Could be hot garbage, and the other thing is it entirely depends on how well he scales without money. That has always been Swain's problem, is that he needed a lot of items to be effective. I don't know that the rework changed that. I still feel like that's probably the case, and if it is, I don't know that support will work. I mean, with champions like that, support can always work if you get enormously ahead. But that is not, you shouldn't plan to get enormously ahead every game as your win condition. That shouldn't work. All right. Last one on the list is a pure, it's like I'm staring into my crystal ball and I'm predicting the future, right? Volibear had some buffs on the PBE, and I haven't checked today to see if they've been reverted or not, but the buffs are that if he runs at you, they are upping the movement speed of the run on the baseline level, so you don't have to put points into your Q to get movement speed out of it. It's less punishing. You don't have to rank it up. Additionally, if a champion is airborne and you roar while you're, let's say, throwing them over your shoulder, it will displace them kind of like what a Janna ult would do, right? If that is the case, and he stays as tanky as he is naturally with the passive that he's got, he would be busted in support. You're level 3 all in, would be so gross, and his damage is so strong with bite early that, I mean, he could literally be busted. And if people don't play him as support, like they try him out as jungle and he doesn't suffer immediate success as a jungler, then he could fall through the cracks and just be an OP as shit support if those buffs stay active, or if those buffs make it to live. So I'm calling it now. I think he will be really damn good if it makes it to live. If it doesn't, then he's still like not that good. Because I mean, imagine that he does what Blitz does, but he has to run at him to do it. That's not as good. Just pick Blitz. Right? You still do an insane amount of damage, and you can do it with like 0 risk. Whereas Volibear, you'll do a lot of damage, but you have to run at somebody's fucking face to accomplish it. It's not a good pattern for a support. You have to stick out too far. So, yeah. Until, if that update goes through, it could be really gross, because it could create some nasty all-in moments. If not, well, that's pretty much that. So, guys, you'll notice that I did not talk about a lot of your traditional supports. I didn't talk about Thresh. I didn't talk about Bard. I didn't really talk about Blitz or Karma or any of those, because I consider them to be just normal meta supports. That being said, Bard is really strong right now, so does tons of fucking damage. If you get good at Bard, he's great. If you don't, then maybe not so much. But all those guys are still around, and depending on their synergy with their keystones, they can all be quite good. Yeah. Get out there and experiment. It's fun. I tried Ziggs as well with the occasional free spell, and he can be oppressive, but he also pushes the lane like a mofo, and you can't not push the lane. So that is something to consider, but the first tower benefits are huge whenever you have somebody else to shoot a tower. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a mini-sode that probably went long. Hell yeah, 42-minute mini-sode. Okay, so I'm just going to call this a sode at this point, and I hope you enjoyed it. Good night, everybody!